All right, welcome to this all-important video where we're going to talk about the exam and more specifically about this DBQ essay, the only essay, the only part of the exam that you're going to need to worry about this year. So this is an important video you may want to watch a couple times over the next few weeks. Here's kind of how I'm going to approach this. We're going to start by just reviewing some basics about the exam. We're going to then walk through the rubric for the DBQ, what you need to do. And then I'm going to introduce you to the first DBQ essay that I want you to write for practice. So my intention is that you're going to write 3 of these between now and not right up to the exam, but the last one will be due several days before the exam. So about 1 a week for the next 3 weeks, so that you can begin to practice how to do this and I can give you some feedback on it. With that in mind, I'm going to strongly suggest, I'm expecting that you're going to do these and get these turned in on time so that I can provide that feedback to everybody. If I don't have your essay turned in on time, then I'm not going to let you write it later using the feedback that I've provided. So make sure you're making these a priority so you can get that timely feedback. All right. What you're looking at right now is what the College Board has put out about our exam. Want to again remind you that this exam is on Friday, May 15th. That's a little over 3 weeks from right now when I'm making this video and when you're receiving it. And you are all taking it at 2 p.m. on that day. So again, make sure that you've got that in your calendar or in your phone, 2 o'clock Friday, May 15th. Make sure your family knows. Make sure that you've already designated a spot where you're going to have quiet, you're going to be free from distraction, where you're going to have space, where you have good Wi-Fi connection. I also would recommend that you would tell your family, make sure they know, and that if possible, they try to stay off like the Wi-Fi at that time, so there's no disruption, especially when you're uploading your essay. So what they told us is that you're going to have 45 minutes to read the question and the documents in this DBQ and respond to that question, and then an additional 5 minutes to upload the response. I'm going to be giving you these practice DBQs through AP Classroom because I'm assuming that the kind of the format that they're using in AP Classroom is going to be comparable to what they're going to use for the exam. So it's probably a good idea that we get used to doing it that way. That's it, as it says here, one question, 45 minutes, 100% of the exam. So this modified DBQ is your entire test. Now, what we're looking at here is kind of a condensed version of the rubric. We're going to look at the actual rubric with a little more detail in a second. But I just kind of want to walk you through this real quickly. So this year, they're only going to give you 5 documents, or what they're calling historical sources. That's less than normal. And one of those 5 will be non-text based. So it'll be an image. It'll probably be a political cartoon or a photograph or a painting or possibly a chart, a graph, a map, something like that. So 4 will be text based, 1 won't. Okay, and we'll talk about the documents more in a minute. As always, it's important that you respond to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis. So again, what that means is you're answering this question in a way that suggests you have knowledge of history. Okay, you're not just regurgitating the question back to them. You're saying something that reflects a knowledge of history that you can then defend. You're making an argument in your response. Okay. As always, I think the best way to do that is 2 shorter, what I call subtopic sentences. So essentially, your thesis is not one long rambling response, but it's 2 shorter sub-thesis statements that tackle part of this. So, it all depends on the type of question, but if it's a compare and contrast type essay, then maybe you're demonstrating one way in which the things are similar and how. and then the other is different. Or if it's causation and they want to know the causes of something, maybe you're developing two different broad causes or two different significant effects, that type of thing. If it's continuity and change, maybe you're talking about in one subtopic sentence a continuity, the way something essentially stayed the same despite this event that could have changed things. And then maybe your other one talks about a significant change that comes out of that. Okay, that usually helps you create a better thesis. And then again, they want historical contextualization. So they want you to take whatever the topic of this essay is, whatever time period it's set in, and then look bigger picture. Maybe what preceded it or what followed it. Show the kind of the continuation of this story, whether it's what got us to this point or where it goes from here. Now, one thing I'll say here, and I'll probably come back to this idea, and if you don't like what I'm going to say, then I don't think it's a big deal, but all year long I've been telling you, start your essay with your contextualization. 3 or 4 sentences, a small but substantial paragraph that kind of establishes contextualization, then go in to your introduction paragraph or thesis. And that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with you doing that. I think to me, it makes more sense. But I always get worried when it comes exam time, especially this online exam and how they're going to be scoring these. And, I know as someone who reads a lot of essays that, you expect certain things, especially when it comes to the structure. And I just wonder if they're expecting that thesis first, an introduction with a thesis first, then kind of a digression, and okay, let me set this in historical context. So if you want to do it that way, intro with your thesis first, then next paragraph, your context. Or as always, contextualization could come at the end of the essay. Feel free to do that. I think that might be a good idea. Just remember, I'm going to say this as much as I can. Let everything you're doing in the essay stand out. So if your first paragraph is your introduction with your thesis, and remember, don't make it a lengthy introduction. Get to that thesis right away. Okay, great. Start a first paragraph, do that. Then skip a space. Make sure you indent the next paragraph. Make it visibly clear to the reader, this is something different now. Okay, this is going to be my contextualization so it stands out. Okay, don't just do a rambling paragraph. And I don't know if typing a response into your computer into AP Classroom, if some of those rules of how to structure and space and indent, maybe you're going to slip your mind, but they can't. Okay, you want to make it easy for the reader to say, all right, I see your thesis there. That's good. I'll give you the point. Oh, okay, here comes contextualization. Well done. I'll give you that point. And make it easy for them. Make it easy for me as I'm scoring it, because it's easy to miss things if they're hidden. Okay. Now, the next bullet point here says support your argument using at least 4 documents. So of the 5 that they're giving you, to get the max score, and that's how we're going to try to get the max score, we need to use at least 4. Now, what you want to remember is you have to use 4 effectively. So if you can use all 5, and I really don't think that's that hard to do, even with 45 minutes, you can do it. Use all 4 or use all 5. But as long as we're using 4 effectively, we're still on track to get the most points, okay? Nothing I've seen said that you have to use that non-text-based one, the visual one. I mean, sometimes to me those are easy to use, but if that scares you or you don't get it or you're like, I don't know how to use that correctly, and that's the one you don't use, fine. But I would still try, okay? There's no penalty for trying to put something in. They'll just say, well, you didn't use that one effectively, but you did use the other 4, so you're good, okay? Now, we'll talk a lot more about the documents, but in addition to using the documents, you do need at least 2 additional pieces of specific historical evidence. So things that are not in the documents that are also going to support your argument in your essay. So to me, the best way to do this is when you first read that prompt, do not look at the documents right away. Do not panic. Do not think to yourself, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? Let me go see if I can find help in the documents. I would stop after I've read the question and I understand it and I know what type it is. Is it causation? Is it comparison? Is it continuity and change? And then I would think, how would I answer this question? If this was not a DBQ, it was just an LEQ, how would I answer this question? What do I know? You know, you're all students of history now. You all know your history well. You can make a historically defensible claim without the help of documents. You have to pause and think about it. Don't be afraid. I'm sure seeing a clock ticking down is going to incite panic. You got to block that out. You have to realize that of those 45 minutes, if you spend 10, 12 thinking, planning, brainstorming, looking at the documents, making notes, and then proceed to write your essay, you will probably write a better essay than if you spent 2 minutes planning and still had 43 to write. Okay, it works every time. You just have to have confidence. That's why I want to practice this at least 3 times. We're going to treat every one of these like it's the exam. And so, yeah, there should be a clock ticking. Okay, think. So when you get the question, start thinking about what you would say, what your thesis would be, and then start thinking about the historical evidence that comes to mind. You know, if there's a time period, start thinking about what are the major developments in that time period. That's where you'll probably get your evidence. Now, when you look at the documents, you might find that some of them touch on that evidence. So it's kind of like, oh, I wanted to use that, but it's in the documents and now I can't. Okay, that happens. But we should have more than a few things in mind. Also, what's nice is sometimes the documents remind you of other things and give you that hint about that other evidence. Okay, so we've seen this a lot with the short answers this year when we had 2 historians making a claim and you had to support their claim. They said use any evidence that's not explicitly in the document. Same thing here. Okay, and keep in mind they're only asking for 2 pieces of outside evidence, and you could certainly have 3, but you're not going to just make a passing reference to them. Okay, you're going to have to describe them. We'll review this, but remember, whenever you use evidence in an essay, whether that's outside evidence or even a document, okay, think of documents as being other evidence. So, if you think about it that way, then you need 6 pieces of evidence in this essay, probably 3 in each paragraph. It doesn't have to be 3 in each paragraph, but that's 3 in each body paragraph. That would probably make sense, but it could be 4 and 2. That's fine. But if you think of all of it, evidence, outside evidence, and document evidence, think of it all as evidence, then remember there's always a 2-step process with evidence. You want to first describe it, tell what happened. What is this document telling you? What is this outside evidence that you're using? What happened? Tell the story a little bit. But then you need to offer analysis. Now you need to explain how or why that evidence supports your claim. Okay? You don't just say it does. This proves that my argument is correct. No. How? Okay. So we'll practice that, and I'll give you some examples of that. But we want to do that with evidence and with documents and the outside evidence. Okay. Next bullet. So remember, we had started to talk this year about sourcing documents, and I gave you that acronym CAP, C-A-P-P, with 2 of the documents. So it says at least 2. So try to do it with 3 or 4 or all 5 if you can. But as long as you effectively, for 2 of them, explain how either, so the CAP acronym that I like to use is contextualization. You're going to contextualize this document. Whatever the document's about, what was going on at that time that would help us understand that document. That's what they call historical situation. Okay, I prefer contextualization, but I guess that would make our acronym SAP instead of CAP, but whatever. Okay, so you could do that. You can talk about the context of the document. You can talk about audience. That's the A. Who was this? If it's a written document, who was the intended audience? Who is this person kind of writing to or speaking to? And we're not just saying who that audience is. We're saying why that matters. You know, President Wilson, when he was addressing Congress, asking them to declare war, was trying to convince the representatives of the American people that Germany's actions were egregious and therefore we needed to respond with this declaration of war. Okay, because Congress has the power to declare war, he's making this claim that Germany has violated our rights on the high seas by resuming unrestricted warfare. Okay, we're talking about why the audience matters. The first, well, there's two P's now. The next one will be purpose. What was the purpose of writing this document? So I probably just did that with the previous, the Wilson speech to Congress. But what is he trying to achieve when writing this? What is she trying to achieve when she gave this speech? So think about the purpose there. Talk about that and why that's important. Okay. And then finally, point of view. So you think about the author of the document. Who are they? What are their biases, their prejudices? What's their background? What about their position would lead them to that point of view? So I'm thinking back to when we looked at a bunch of documents in the debate over imperialism. We saw Captain Alfred Thayer Mahan, who was a Navy captain, and he had written a book that was arguing for an improved Navy so that the United States could protect its commerce and have ports for the Navy all over the world. So he was saying, yes, we need to build an empire for our economy, but also for our stronger defense. Well, as a Navy captain, certainly he would want to strengthen the Navy. Okay, so his point of view is going to be different from, say, a pacifist or somebody who's in the anti-imperialist league, or just someone who's not in the Navy and maybe doesn't see that as important. Okay, so you only need to do one of these four things with at least two of the documents, and it can be a different thing each time. Okay, so we're going to practice that. Try to practice all four of them in these upcoming DBQs, but that's it. Okay. And then finally, the last bullet point they're mentioning here, talking about a corroborating, qualifying, or modifying an argument. This is what they call complex understanding. So you may want either one of your documents or one of your outside evidence, or maybe something completely different at the end to kind of show the complexity of this argument. Something that shows that it's not as simple. So maybe you've argued that there was a great deal of continuity that came out of the American Revolution. Nothing really changed. Slavery still existed in the United States. Women were still denied many political and social rights. There was no real economic upheaval that came with the American Revolution. There were still wealthy people and there were still poorer classes. But then you want to show that, well, there was something, it wasn't quite that simple. There were the beginnings of change. This began a discussion about slavery, led to the rise of an abolitionist movement, or did inspire some northern states to abolish slavery, or something like that. So we've talked a lot about complex understanding. Okay, that's, I believe, 1 point in the DBQ. So if you're missing that point, you'll be okay. You're still going to do really well, and I think you're still going to get a 5. But we'll see, and I'll practice that as well. Okay, a little more information here. It says that the DBQ can be derived from any of units 3 through 7. So what are units 3 through 7? So let's take a look here at this slide. So basically, this can pick up with kind of the French and Indian War and kind of the early seeds of the American Revolution. So what they're telling you right there is you're not getting a colonial era DBQ. Now, does that mean we shouldn't review the colonial era at all? No, not at all, because remember, contextualization, we might want to go back into the colonial period, okay? But it is telling you that we don't need to be as worried about colonial American history as maybe we normally would be. So from the French and Indian War or the beginnings of the American Revolution, all the way up to where I ended our lessons, the end of World War II, 1945. So it's still a pretty big stretch. We're talking about 2 centuries worth of history they want to focus on. What I think you might want to do, because we all want to guess, what's the DBQ going to be about? You might want to think within each of these periods, think of the major types of questions: comparison, continuity and change, causation. What big issues, what big topics in each of these units might they be touching on? Okay. Keep in mind too that I've been assigning you to watch the College Board's own review videos. Those would be a great way, especially the ones units 3 through 7. Those would be a great way to kind of touch on some of these bigger ideas. So, if you did them in the timely manner that I'm assigning them, I know I'm not done because they're not done putting all those out there. But if you're doing them in the timely manner that I'm suggesting, great, that would help. But they might be worth watching to get ready for this, okay? Also, on this slide, read what it says here about each of these periods. So if I'll share this slide with you, or this website, but if you click on this, this is, ignore this 10 to 17% of score, that's based on the original exam, but it's giving you some of the bigger topics within, okay? So I can't tell you what the DBQ is going to be on, but I got a strong feeling that if it's in period 3 here, it's going to be one of these topics, and likewise with the other ones. So, assuming there's 6 topics in each period, that at least gets you down to about 30 ideas. So, might be a good way to kind of plan. All right. Okay. Nothing else really here that I want to show you. So here is the rubric. I'm attaching this as well into Google Classroom for your reference. They're with this modified exam, they're giving you 10 points. They have not told us, and I don't know that they will tell us, how many points do you need to get a 5. I wouldn't be shocked, and I'm making this up, I wouldn't be shocked if you need 9 or 10 to get a 5. I would hope 8, 9, or 10. Maybe 6 or 7 is going to be a 4. 4 or 5 is going to be a 3, and then on down from there. So I'm making that up. I don't know that. They didn't say that. But they kind of made it, typically DBQs are worth 7 points, but they've kind of made it 10, I think, so that they can have more diversity in scores. And so to me, something like that, 2 points, every 2 points being a score makes some sense, okay? So, we're all going to get 5s. In my head, I'm thinking we're going to need at least 8 out of these 10 points, but possibly 9, okay? So I'll let you look at this on your own. I'll just point out a couple things here, but you're getting a point for that thesis. Let's not miss that point, because even though you might say, well, that's just 1 point, pretty hard to earn a lot of these points if you don't have that foundation of a good thesis. 1 point for contextualization shouldn't be hard for us to get that point either. The evidence is where we're getting a lot of the points, and they're breaking that down between evidence from the documents and then the outside evidence beyond the documents. So remember, we're aiming for 4 documents and using them effectively. So The fewest points you can get here, 1 point, is if you just use the content of 2 documents to address your prompt. Just using the content. That's a bad essay. We need to support our argument. And that's the analysis part. That's showing not just, hey, here's what this document says. It kind of relates to what I'm arguing, but to show how it does, how it supports your argument. So read this very carefully, especially this part here in the right margin. Okay, you can get 3 points possible from the documents if you use 4 effectively. And notice what it says here: to earn 3 points, the response must accurately describe, not just quote, but describe what the document's about from 4 of the documents, and use the content of the documents to support your argument response. So that's what I said earlier, that 2-step process. With all my evidence, documents or outside, I want to first describe it, say what's happening, and then I want to explain how that supports my claim. So, it might require a couple sentences to describe, and then a couple, 3, to show how it supports what I'm trying to say. Okay. And then likewise, evidence beyond the documents. They're giving you 2 points for 2, but you got to describe it and show how it supports what you're trying to say. Okay, supports your thesis. And then as we scroll further, 2 points for sourcing the documents, a point apiece. So if you're using one of those 4 things, CAP, contextualization, audience, purpose, point of view. If you're doing that effectively for one of the documents, well, then you'll get 1 point. For 2, you'll get 2. So try with 3, okay, in case you miss on one of them. And, look what it says here. Again, they call it decision rules. This is like how you earn these points. To earn this point, the response must explain how or why the document's point of view, purpose, context, audience is relevant to an argument about the prompt for the document. Not just he was in the Navy, but why does that matter? Okay, why does that help shape his point of view on this issue? Okay. And then finally, the last point is for that complex understanding. And as we've said, I've been saying this all year. If you look at, I always think it's, hopefully I'm highlighting, hopefully you see that too. If you're explaining both similarity and difference, explaining both continuity and change, or multiple causes, or both cause and effect, if you're doing that, you should earn this point. And that's why I say if you make your thesis, both similarity and difference, both continuity and change, you should be more or less guaranteed this point. Or at the very least, if at the end of your essay, you say, okay, well, there were many similarities here. One key difference was this, and then develop that. Remember, it can't just be a passing reference. You need to develop this in several sentences, a mini paragraph, and you want to set that paragraph apart. If it comes at the end of your essay, in new paragraph, skip space, indent, and then use words like I just did to kind of show it's a complex understanding. While, let's do, I said earlier, continuity and change coming out of the revolution. While there was tremendous continuity coming out of the revolution, and it didn't really change much socially, there was a significant change that did emerge, and that was the beginnings of an abolitionist movement, a call for the end of slavery, including some northern states abolishing slavery, and then Quakers really talking about abolishing slavery. And then by the 1830s, there was a full-fledged abolitionist movement going on, something like that. Okay. You don't just make a quick reference. You got to kind of support it, show what you're talking about. Okay, so I'm sure we'll have lots of questions about this rubric and how things are scored. We can discuss that in office hours, and I'll do my best to give you some decent feedback on your essays when you write them. Let me show you, here it is, the DBQ that I'm going to have you write first. So this will be coming to you through AP Classroom. and that is how you're going to respond. So a lot of the directions at the top are what we just went over. Now, please note, this is not a modified DBQ. This is kind of a normal one. So there are a few more documents, but I'm gonna use the scoring rubric for the modified exam. So I don't care how many documents are in here, you have to use 4 to get maximum points, okay? I'm gonna encourage you to try to use the visual document, for practice with this one. There is a visual document. So here it is. Sometimes it gets buried in here. The prompt says this: evaluate the extent to which regional differences about slavery contributed to political tensions. They give you a period of 1830 to 1831. So what type of essay is this? Yeah, you can't answer that, but this is pretty much a causation essay. Okay, so remember, causation means you're just kind of showing a cause and effect relationship, which is really what history is all about. Now, it does say evaluate the extent, so we need to kind of suggest some degree to which, so maybe we want to say that certain regional differences were significantly impactful on political tensions and maybe others less so. But we want to think cause and effect. So, I would ask you, if we were in class, what are the causes in this prompt? What is it identifying as causes, and what are the effects? Hopefully that's very obvious to you. Regional differences about slavery are the causes. So you need to think about that first before you look at documents. What are some of the regional differences, different attitudes? Maybe it's, economic, maybe it's social. What are the regional differences about slavery, North versus South? And then the effect, it says these are contributing to, so they are causing, and the effect is political tension in this period. So you also want to think about political tension. Okay, what are the political tense moments in this period? Okay? And so in this essay, you want to show how those regional differences lead to these political tensions. You want to make sure you're talking about both. Now, when you look at the documents, you might want to ask yourself, is this document giving me a regional difference, or is it giving me political tension? And there might be both. There might be more of one than the other. It might be all one and none of the other. Okay, so that means your outside evidence could fill in. And when you look at these documents, they might remind you of things that could be other regional differences or other political tensions. Okay. Now, as you look at the documents, remember, you don't want to get too bogged down in the documents. You don't want to be quoting them. You don't want to be saying, oh, this is a minor detail. You want to think big picture. What is this document telling me? And we always want to start with the source information. I hope you know who Garrison is and what the Liberator was. Okay, right there, if you better know who William Lloyd Garrison is. If not, make sure you're reviewing. But right there, I would say, wow, I know Garrison. I could use this maybe point of view. I know this guy. I can talk about him and why he would have a particular perspective on this. Okay. Maybe you recognize in document 3 here this name David Wilmot. Now, it doesn't say that this is his proviso, but if I know what the Wilmot proviso is, that could be outside evidence. Okay. I like document 4. If you look at it carefully, you should recognize what this is, and it might make you think of some other things. Okay. And then here, document 6 is our visual document. So again, you may struggle to use these. You may not see how they fit in, but I want to challenge you to try to use them. Make them your 5th document that you're going to try to use here. So there are 6 instead of 5, so you can certainly eliminate one. Really don't want you to try to use all 6 in this essay because we want to get used to the time we have for the exam. So just decide you're not using one, try to use the other 5. At the very least, try to use 4, and go from there. Okay. All right. I'm going to end this video with that. I'm going to wish you luck. Like I said at the beginning, do this in a timely manner so that I can give you feedback and it can be useful to you. If I don't have your essay on time, you're not going to benefit from the feedback, and I'm not going to be able to, individualize this for everyone. So I really need you to get these done on time. Use the other resources I've posted here with this video. The rubric will be helpful, and maybe some other handouts that I can put in there. If you need anything or something would be helpful, let me know. I'll add it in. If you have specific questions, we can talk about this in office hours. And then, like I said, once they're in, I'll try to give you your results and give you some feedback that way. All right. Good luck.